Hey there. So recently one of my friends spilled coffee all over his keyboard, and I figured I might as well show you the process I'm doing right now on how I clean it and so on and so forth. Now, I know in the past I've done a video on replacing all the LEDs in my own keyboard, but since this is quite a bit of a different process, I figure I'll make a video on how to show how to take a keyboard apart, how to lubricate it, and how to put it back together. Now, you don't necessarily have to lubricate your key switches, you can just clean them and put them back together, but I figure I'll show you that too because there is quite a bit of a difference in sound. Let's get a close-up here on these two keys. So here on the left I've got the cleaned and lubricated key switch, and on the right I've got the just regular one that you would get with the keyboard, and I've put the mic, as you can see, directly in front of it, so hopefully you'll be able to hear the difference. So here's the cleaned one with lubrication, and the regular. You can hear it's a little bit sandier sounding, a little more gritty, plastic grinding, and not so much on that side. So that's the reason why you might want to lubricate it, but still, you can just clean them, and so on and so forth. Now, before we get into actually taking these apart, you'll see that many of the keys on your keyboard aren't going to come out that easily. Some keyboards will let you take the keys out, but for the most part, like a keyboard like this, a Corsair, they're soldered in. So I'm going to show you how to take those out, and then we'll get to cleaning the keyboard. Okay, so when it comes to taking keycaps out of your actual keyboard, there's a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to show you the cheapest method first, and work my way up to the easiest method, which unfortunately is the most expensive, but not too expensive, as you'll see in a minute. So, on the back side, you're going to see a bunch of switches here. So, here we got, this is commonly the switch that you'll see, and that's the LED. So, you want to kind of go for the LED first, I find. It doesn't really matter which order you go. Take out the LED first, and then you're going to desolder the switch. You can see we got one still here. I'm going to do the F keys up at the top. So let's zoom right on in. You know what, let me get you a better view. Okay, so as I was saying, we're going to do one of these F keys up here. And first, what I always recommend laying down is flux if you have some. It just really helps the soldering process go a lot easier with desoldering. Soldering you can get away with because there's, rosin core and all kinds of different flux usually inside of the solder itself. But when you're desoldering, there's often this lead-free sort of garbagey stuff that just is on there. So I'm just laying down a little bit. This happens to be MG Chemicals RA Rosin Flux Paste. I should really have it inside of a syringe, but I don't really have a syringe on hand and haven't for a while. I should probably just go buy one and put it in. So I just dabbed it on, and that should be good enough for that specific switch. And now, the first method I'm going to show you, and you're going to want a well-ventilated room for this, especially when you put that much flux on it, Jesus. The first method I'm going to show you is with wick. Now this is going to take a while and it's quite tedious, but basically if you've done any soldering before, you're going to put the wick down onto here, you're going to heat up that pad and it's going to absorb right into that wick, as you'll see here. Sorry. And you see you make your way around. You get that right off. You can see it absorbing. So that's most of it gone, but you can see it's kind of annoying. There's still some in there. There's another tool you can get too. There's a manual sucker where I don't have one. They're only like $3 or something. You push the plunger down, you heat, and you soup, and you suck it up. Now the tool that I have and recommend that you get is a solder sucker itself, especially if you're going to be doing this a lot and you're going to be taking all the keycaps out. They look a bit like this. I have a review on this one. I'll put it in the top right corner. And this one's actually only about $100 Canadian. So it's super cheap. Is the quality as good as, say, like the actual Real Hako brand? Not really. But does it work pretty well, especially for some hobbyist stuff like this? Yeah. Anyways, that's what I'm going to be using here. You just place it over the top, give it a bit of a wiggle so you know that it's moving, pull the trigger and it's gone. See that? And that's always going to be clean right there. Do the same for the LED. It's gone. There you go, and it's gone. Now that's kind of tricky because we've kind of left a hole in the board there. And I found when you do it with flux, that happens. So I'm just going to re-put some back on. Like that, as if I pretend it didn't even happen. I'm going to redo it again here. Oops. There you go, done. So that's that. So that's one key taken out. See how easy it is with the proper tools? The actual $3 suckers don't work too bad. I've used them before, but it's a little more fiddly, so to speak. Now to get this key out, you can try to push here, but if it's really not coming out, I do have a bit of a technique that everyone's going to cringe at. Put your keyboard up like this, prop it up like this. So I propped it up on the actual flux thing, and give me 1 second here. Right, so with it propped up like that, I'm going to take a punch here, going to put it right on the back and hit it with a hammer, and out it comes. So now you can take that right out, and of course, some people will say, why the hell did you do that? You could have just taken it out nicely from the front. Well, I already know that it's pretty much ready to go. So you don't really have to use the hammer with it. If you're feeling like, damn, I don't want to break my switches, don't listen to me. Just pry around it gently with a flat-headed screwdriver, but I don't really give a crap, so I'm just going to hit them in the back with a hammer. So that's how that works. Let me show you how you actually clean them. I swear it's a lot more gentle. So when it comes to taking apart the switch itself, I've already removed the LED. You just pull that out. There's a couple of ways you can do it. There are 3 tools that I can think of at the top of my head, at least. There's the basic flat-headed screwdriver. There's this 3D printed part that I've come up with, which I'll have in the description. And there's also a tool that you can buy that allows you to pry it up, similar to if you put tweezers. This doesn't work for tweezers. Into each of these 4 slots. So you may notice that there's actually 4 slots on each side, and it would just go in there and sort of put a little leverage on each side so that these tabs pry up and it flies off. I'm going to start with the tool that you all have. It's a flat-headed screwdriver. So let's just bring in the light a little bit here. I think that's good. And we're going to pry up on each tab. So start with the first tab, whichever side you pick, doesn't matter, and you'll see it sort of burns a lip. Put your fingernail under there, or whatever flat surface, or a little skinny shim you got to go under there. Then the other side, pry up as well. You'll see it starts to come up. You can put both fingers, however you want to hold that. Put something flat to hold those up. And don't worry, they're not going to really want to close. They're going to want to hold in place. You don't need to worry about it closing back down right away. It's just when you go to open the other side. So put your nails back in the other that slot so that it doesn't close. And then you're going to do the same thing again on the other side. So you're just going to pry up like this, and like that. There you go. And you're going to do the same for this side, and boom, it's just going to spring apart. Luckily, it's spring-loaded, so it kind of wants to come apart. Now we've got 3 pieces here. Well, really 4 if you don't count these as the same thing. We've got the stem, the spring, the top, and the actual mechanism itself that registers the click, or the push, I should say. So the spring, if you got, just as a little fun fact, if you've got a bunch of coils here, then it's probably a lightweight spring. If you've got only a few coils, it's probably a pretty heavy spring. This is the part, if you're going to lubricate it, you're going to lubricate it the most, as well as inside of the actual housing. And at the back, we see that we actually have the mechanism itself. So how the mechanism actually works, I'm not sure if you can see it, but essentially there are 2 tiny little flaps on the side here that get pushed by the plastic itself. And you can see that I can't push them with one device. It's designed for these 2 little prongs right here on the plastic. So if we look carefully, we can see there's a piece that sticks out a little bit on the side of the plastic. And again, it probably varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, but for Cherry, this is how it is. There's a little extra tab here that can easily quite break off if you're not careful. And those actually push against the 2 little metal prongs here and separate the contacts so that once they're broken, the press is registered. So I'm going to put the spring back together here and show you that. So if we're going to reassemble it, the steps that you do it is you put the spring back down on the center. It aligns itself with that little cylinder-like thing, so that it wants to stay in place. And then you can put the actual stem back in place, and so put the 2 little tabs that would face towards the copper actual actuation switch, and you can see it sort of activating there, hopefully. Right, you can see it separate a bit. And with it just sort of floating, now we're going to put the top piece on. For Cherry, the logo actually faces towards the top where the copper and contacts are. But it can vary from different brands. Like I believe Kale, it goes on the underside. Either way, let's say I put it on the wrong side like this, you're going to know pretty quickly. You can't really close it. The metal gets in the way and all that. So you'll figure out pretty quickly that you put it on the wrong way, and you can only get it wrong once, so to speak. Just don't push too hard. Sort of feel it. Oh, it feels like it's going to go. Okay, there you go. And then you got it back together. No problem. So the other tool where you pry it apart is quite nice, but I actually prefer, I know it sounds like because I made it, of course I'm going to like it the most because I made it, but is my 3D printed part. And the reason is because, two reasons. It's quite simple to put them on and just impale them on there, and the whole thing just comes apart like that, right? So that works. And also, while you're cleaning and lubricating it, you can just get in there with it as a little paintbrush, and you don't have to hold the switch. It's just held nicely. So when it comes to cleaning, the most affordable and easy way to do it is just to take a Q-tip, soak it in some rubbing alcohol, and just sort of gently go over all the components. You can use a paintbrush as well. This one's a little exuberant, and just sort of go over all the pieces, the stems, make sure they're all nice and clean before you go ahead and do that. You can use a microfiber cloth as well to dry them and get them all perfectly nice. That's a bit big of a paintbrush. I'd probably go with this size one, but that's besides the point. Once you're done with that, you can lubricate them with a variety of different lubes. There's PTFE lubes, there's silicone lubes. Most people are going to use the PTFE lubes, usually like the super lubrications. They usually use a paintbrush as well. Similar application, you just take it and lubricate it with the paintbrush. The Q-tip's a little large for really getting in there, so people often just use the paintbrush to get in there with the lubricant. You may also, when you're cleaning, want to use compressed air. But if you're like me and you're doing an entire keyboard, so you got every component divided out into little buckets, you may want to consider the ultrasonic cleaner. I know it's a little bit much, but they aren't too expensive if you're going to do this a lot. Really up to you, of course. If you're only doing this for your own personal keyboard, I wouldn't worry about it, but if you're doing it for a bunch of people, might as well maybe try and think about the ultrasonic cleaner. So again, just clean the stems off, use the paintbrush, use the Q-tip, really get it nice and clean, especially the stem and the sides right in here, along the edges and in the bottom. That's the most important part. So along the sides, in the bottom, and then of course in the actual housing at the top half as well. So I figured as sort of a final scene before I finish this video, I'll just do a little bit of showing myself lubricating some of these keys. All I use is a paintbrush, and I just put a little on the end, and then so on and so forth. PTFE lubricants work the best. Yeah, that's pretty much what I recommend. Have a few things in the description. The tool, and some lubricants, and if you're really feeling adventurous, an ultrasonic cleaner, and of course the desoldering tools as well. Okay, so it's just going to be quiet from here on in pretty much.